But like I said, I think I just want to give you my quick take on it. A lot of people will say, I do certification because I want a badge of honor. Okay, yeah. Will it help you with your career? Yeah. I said, but the actual reason that, and I wish that more people would see it this way. I think the actual reason why the PMP is such a valuable institution in certification, and for me, it's still the gold standard of certification. All the other ones are way further down the row. Is because it's about committing to a common language. It's about committing to a common understanding. I think the biggest illness or problem that we have, generationally speaking, in our discipline of project management is that there's new generations that come up and they're faced with the same problems and the same challenges that generations before them were faced, okay? And they have to come up with a solution, and they're constantly reinventing the wheel. And I don't think that the PMBOK guide or certification can eliminate what you mentioned. There's always going to be new facets, that will rejuvenate or accentuate or add to it. But that's where I would give you pushback. A lot of people act like Agile is something new. Quite honestly, the first time I read Jeff Sutherland's book on Scrum, I said, wow, this is a really great book. I agree with everything that's in here. But I knew this already 15 years ago because for me it was common sense. Just like you said, originally when you did the PMP certification, the questions you asked were based on people who have experience. I mean, I looked at it and I said, this is like my roadmap for how I do execution in projects. Project management is not only initiation and planning, it's execution. And then, doing iterative cycles, it's not new to me. I never separated the two, So what I often say is when I do waterfall projects, there's always an Agile element to it. And this is where I piss off some of my Scrum teams. When I do Agile projects, when I do initiation and planning, I force them through some waterfall things that, this is outdated. We don't need. I'm like, no, this is. I mean, I think they're a perfect match. I never saw the conflict of interest. What do you think about it? What do you think about the whole new Agile thing? Is it some people might say it's a revolution or an evolution. What's your take on the last 10 years? Although Agile's been around a lot longer than 10 years.
Oh, yeah, hell of a lot longer. What I tell people is Agile is predictive with some new terminology.
Yeah, a lot of it is redundant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there is one thing. I mean, I always get this question at the end of every one of my presentations. What do you think about Agile? So I've sort of got a canned thing in that I like Agile in terms of the process, because it's no different than what I've been doing for 50 years already.
And if it makes you happy calling it something else, good for you.
Instead of WBS, they call them stories. Instead of learning curve, they call them retrospectives. I mean, they got all.
Instead of calling it a meeting, you call it a ceremony.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Instead of calling it a milestone, you call it a release. Okay.
I think that Agile has some one big advantage that I like about Agile is a much more frequent statusing of accomplishment versus expectation.
It goes to the core, I think, of the biggest weakness or the biggest challenge that we as project managers have always faced. And actually, I just posted something on LinkedIn yesterday. I sometimes put all my smart ass comments on there. But I wrote something to the effect that the number one things that sponsors and clients like to ignore is, the classical triple constraint, faster, cheaper, and the number one thing that project managers never get tired of repeating, so that our sponsors and clients. I think the beautiful thing about Agile is it doubles down on this issue that whether we like it or not, it's kind of like kabuki theater, right? We have these pre-described roles. Sponsors act in a certain way because that's the way they think they need to act. And project managers are kind of that counterweight, and there's always a certain conflict of interest. And I think Agile just says, you know what? In a world that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, the only way to overcome this is not to predetermine everything, which makes a lot of sense, and kind of do it in iterative cycles, learning by doing, or whatever the heck you want to call it. Plan, do, check, act. I mean, Edwards Deming actually was a precursor to the project management process groups and was a precursor to Agile, in my opinion.
No, I think you're right. I've read a lot of Deming's work, and hell, it's like, I could have written this.
Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I try to make it clear because I sort of have a reputation of being anti-agile. It's not true at all. So I have to try to make sure that
I'm
people
with
are
you. I'm the
clear.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and predictive's never going to go away.
Yeah.
Waterfall approach is never going to go away.
Yeah. Actually, I do some training work for a large IT company. And they always tell me that their clients, because they're an IT company, their clients expect them to work agile.
Yep.
But the products that they sell are so complex, the only way for them to make a healthy margin and deliver in quality is to be fairly dogmatic with how they implement the system. So in reality, their projects by nature, I would say about like 80% predictive and 20% agile, right? But they have to use the agile nomenclature because otherwise the clients get irritated.
Sure. If they're IT, they got to talk agile. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy the way it works out, but the PMI is causing a little problem with this as well, because as they transition to agile and in the sixth edition, they put in some agile stuff so they could claim they were current. But now they've gone overboard. Now the feedback I get from people who take the exam is that it's about 70% agile. PMI will claim 50-50. That's what they claim, 50-50. But the people who take the damn exam are saying that's not accurate. It's 70% agile.
I wouldn't be surprised. Or at least what they call falls under that clause of tailoring. You know what I think it is? I think Goliath was afraid of David. You know? Hands down, PMI is the largest professional organization